And we are live.
And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, and Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. You are Florida Gator fans, and you have the number 3 ranked basketball team in America. Graham, what a week it was. Wins over Auburn and Mississippi State on the road. Both games in which the Gators were not fully 100%. And now you look at all the bracketology predictions that are coming out. And as we sit here right now, Florida would probably be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure if the most passionate, diehard, bleed orange and blue Gator fan saw anything like this 2 months ago.
Saying they weren't 100% is generous also. I mean on what was on Tuesday, my days are getting mixed up. On Tuesday, um I mean Condon goes down in the first 30 seconds of the game
Yeah.
and Elijah Martin wasn't playing already. And I mean, I don't know. He looks really good, so I don't want to assume he's still hurt. But I mean, Walter Clayton Jr. is like less than 3 weeks removed from turning his own ankle as well. Um, and of course, he's balling right now. So I assume that ankle's feeling just fine. It looks like it's feeling just fine. But I mean, you've had significant injuries to significant starters over the last couple of weeks, and it really doesn't seem like Florida's missed much of a beat at all. And to me, Hack, I was talking about this the other day with our friend Dylan Denmark, because it looks like none of these injuries are going to be season enders. None of them are catastrophic. It seems like, Condon will probably need a couple of games off in a couple of weeks or whatever. And Martin may need another game or two, but it looks like he's going to be back sooner than later. And it seems like Walter Clayton Jr. is okay. Because none of these are serious injuries, Hack, they've turned out to be honestly a good thing for this team. I think it forced Todd Golden to shake up the rotation just enough to where I think they've unlocked a new level they weren't at before.
Well, I'll tell you this. I was wrong about that because you and I sat here many, many weeks this year. We talked about the 8-man rotation and do they have enough depth? And we said, at least I said, yeah, eight guys is enough, but you start getting injuries and you're going to have problems. And they've had injuries and they have maybe played better. I mean, I don't think people fully understand. You were on such a euphoria after that Auburn win. That was a ranked Mississippi State team. That
Yeah.
was a Mississippi State team on national television that was 17-6, ranked 22 in America. You're coming off the euphoria again of just beating number 1 Auburn. You
And a
lose
team that
Alex
doesn't
Con
lose at home very often.
Right. You lose Alex Condon, like you said, in the first 30 seconds. Um, and to win that game and to be, we're trailing at the half, mind you, and come down and do a 17-0 run to begin the second half, that 5 or 6 minutes to begin the second half against Mississippi State is absolutely, to me, the best 5 minute stretch of basketball they've played the entire year. They
Yeah.
were dominant against a ranked team on their floor. That was big time, man. There's no other way around that.
Well, and they had a similar stretch coming out of halftime against Auburn. It wasn't the
Yep.
same exact thing. It wasn't 17-0 run. Uh, but it was a similar thing that they've got this ability to come out of halftime, whatever adjustments they make, and maybe if they can catch the other team out of halftime a little bit lethargic or what have you, they have this ability in those moments to step on throats. And as a Gator fan, it's very fun to watch because they just arguably my favorite thing about this team, Hack. I think you see it with Alex Condon. You definitely see it with Thomas Houck. You see it with Elijah Martin when he's out there. Multiple guys that play significant minutes for them are not just good, they're not just talented, they've got edge to them. you can tell they like to mix it up with guys back and forth. They like to not just dunk on you, but rub your nose in it type of guys. And those are the same type of guys that when they smell blood, they can really put you away in a hurry. And that's one of my favorite things about this team. They've had a few times here and there throughout the year, not a bunch of them. The Missouri game, they just played horrible. The South Carolina game, they were lucky to come away with a win. But outside of that hack, for the most part, not only is this team very talented and really good, but they show up ready to play night in, night out. To your point, I mean, Mississippi State when that game was where it was, that was a classic letdown spot, and that second half was one of the most dominant performances of the year.
I mean, the bottom line is they've played 24 games and they've only had one stinker.
Yeah,
Tennessee and Knoxville was a stinker, and that was bad.
I,
But
I,
aside from
I
that,
would I would say Missouri was a stinker.
yeah, you say that, and I agree with you. They just ran out of time. They only lost by one. They clearly
Sure, but
outplayed
that was their
Missouri.
own fault.
Well, right, but I'm just saying they clearly outplayed Missouri in the second half and
Yeah,
absolutely outplayed Missouri in the final 10 minutes. If
yeah,
that game was 40 minutes and 45 seconds, they probably beat Missouri. They literally just ran out of time. So,
I
yeah, was
agree.
that but the Tennessee game was a stinker. But the point is, 23 times this year, they've played well enough to win. And they've won 21 of those, including now 8-3 in the conference.
And
And
keep
I
in
got to
mind,
tell
Hack. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to say, well, to help your point, keep in
yeah.
mind at Rupp Arena, if Kobe Brea doesn't just go completely nuclear in that game, Florida wins that game.
Well, yeah, you score 100 points on the road at Rupp Arena. No, I totally agree. Um, I mean, I don't know. This will be more of a conversation for the end of the year to kind of see where it lands. But for a 2 year stretch, Lee Humphrey was maybe the best Gator basketball shooter I've ever seen in my life. And they've had some other really, really good ones. Boy, when Walter Clayton's on, man, he is. Anthony Roberson was a really good shooter. They've had some really good shooters over the years. Teddy Dupay, the brief time Jason Williams was there. I think Walter Clayton's in that conversation. When he's on, that guy will just line up from 30 feet and not think anything of it. It is amazing.
I think Walt is their. I think Walter Clayton is arguably the best shooter in the history of the program that can get his own shot. Like Lee Humphrey is the best shooter in the history of the program, in my opinion. But Lee needed to be set up by Torian Green and those guys, and Corey Brewer and all that. And they played a lot of inside out basketball too with Noah and Horford in the middle. And he was the beneficiary of a lot of kicking that back out, right? Um, Walter Clayton, to your point, not only is he an elite shooter, but if nobody else on the court for the Gators has it, and if the other team is on an 8-0 run, and you just need somebody on your team to dribble this ball across half court and just figure it out, he is one of the best in the history of the program at that.
Mm-hmm.
He reminds me in a lot of ways. He's a better shooter than this guy, but just in terms of like moments of a game, he reminds me of Scotty Wilbekin, because Scotty Wilbekin was the guy that Nick Calathis. Good point, Anthony. He mentioned Nick Calathis. Scotty, I remember when that team was making that Final Four run, and when they would play teams that would get on those runs, Scotty Wilbekin always seemed to be the guy that would go down the court and hit the tough jumper, hit the big three, get the and one. He would make that play that would slow that momentum and get Florida back into it. That's Walter Clayton now. And Walter Clayton's even better at it, in my opinion. He's a better offensive. Scotty Wilbekin was an elite defender. Walter Clayton's an even better offensive player. It always feels like when the other team's on a run, I always feel like Walter Clayton's going to hit one of those 30-footers, or he's going to get an and one or something like that. And he's so smooth, man. He makes his shooting stroke look so easy. It is unreal.
Today's Gator Bytes podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. Go to se-ortho.com for the very best, an orthopedic specialist here in Northeast Florida. The good Dr. Kevin Murphy joins Jeff and Dan on the drill every Thursday morning to give his analysis of injuries in the world of sports. And again, thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for their continued support for years now of the Gator Bytes podcast. There is not an easy stretch in an SEC schedule, so I don't want to make it sound like it's an easy stretch, Graham. But if there were to be a 4-game stretch that you look at and you say, all right, we can kind of sit Condon out to make sure he's good for the end of the year. South Carolina, Oklahoma, LSU, and Georgia is about as good as you can ask for.
With a decent amount of those at home, too.
Yeah, and I believe, like, those are, like, 4 of the only teams that aren't currently ranked. It's wild. The South Carolina game tomorrow will be interesting because, again, people are going to look at that conference schedule record. They're 0-11. I mean, that speaks for itself. Yet they were 5 seconds away from being 1-10, and the one was about to be Florida, unless Will Richard did what he did in Columbia a few weeks back. Hopefully that has the Gators' attention enough because you're coming home off of a 2-game road stretch in which you beat 2 ranked opponents. You're playing the last place team in the conference. This would be a classic spot for a letdown, but because this team darn near beat you a couple of weeks ago, I think that might really help Florida this weekend.
And they're at home is the main thing, I think, Hack. And, I mean, you're right. I mean, Florida should have lost. That's
Florida
South
got
Carolina.
lucky to win that game. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always really critical of Will Richard on this show, and in general, he just kind of bothers me at certain points. I feel like he disappears at certain times offensively, and it drives me crazy. But in that game, if you remember the last 3 minutes of that game, he just went crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
He
people talk
scored
about
all
the
the points. He
layup.
got steals. Like,
people talk about the layup to win it, which was obviously the biggest play. But if you go back, yeah, you look at like the 2 or 3 minutes at the end of that game, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. So, anyways, if he didn't have that little crazy run, they lose that game. But, yeah, I mean, South Carolina has not won a conference game still, which is crazy. And even without Alex Condon, you're at home. You're at home. You should get the crowd into it. You should hit some big threes. And I think I don't totally know, but if I had to guess, they're going to get Martin back sooner than later within the next couple of games.
It is a weird scenario though. It's like an 8:30 tip tomorrow night, which is kind of, I mean, obviously late for a Saturday night. So we'll see. I mean, I imagine it's going to be a good crowd, but if you're traveling in from Jacksonville or whatever, I'm not sure if you're going to an 8:30 game in Gainesville. So we'll see what the crowd looks like as well.
Yeah, I agree with you to the Condon point though, Hack. Like that. Here's the thing that they're in this stretch where they're not going to play. They're going to play a couple teams that aren't very good, or at least aren't very good by the SEC standards this year. That's a blessing and a curse, right? The blessing is you're playing teams that aren't good that you should beat. The curse is costs you a lot more if you lose those games, right? It's going to cost you a lot more if you throw up a stinker against LSU or South Carolina and lose. It's going to cost you a lot more on your resume than if you were to have lost on the road at Auburn or when you lost to Tennessee.
See, I want to talk about the resume because you're not wrong. I've always believed 1, 2, or 3 seeds. I'm not sure how much difference it really makes because, all right, if you're a 1, you play a 16, obviously. You're a 2, you play a 15. You're a 3, you play a 14. How much difference is there really between a 14 seed and a 16 seed? I don't know. Maybe there is a little bit, but I don't think there's that much. And then in the
historically, it does tell you there's more than you'd think, though, I will say.
Yeah, but again, how many 14s have beat 3s? I mean, you could probably count it on.
Way more than 16s have beaten 16s have beaten 1s, I think, twice ever.
Have beaten twice, yeah. But, I mean, I would imagine 14s have beaten 3s less than 15 times, historically. I mean, it's to your point, it's better to be a 1 seed. I'm not saying that, but a 14 will beat a 3 every 4 or 5 years. It doesn't happen. It's not like a 12 over a 5. And then you get to the second round where if all the top seeds advance and you're a 1, a 2, or a 3, that means you're still probably playing a team that's either just inside the top 25 or just outside the top 25. And then the Sweet 16, all bets are off because a 1 would play a 4 and a 2 would play a 3. And at that point in the Sweet 16, you're playing really good teams. So I don't know if it matters necessarily other than like a bragging right, a badge of honor thing if you're a 1, a 2, or a 3. But having said that, I had Jerry Palm on Hacker After Dark. He's the bracketology guy for CBSSports.com. And they're actually doing something interesting this weekend. They do it every year. They get the committee together on CBS this Sunday, a month out from Selection Sunday, and they'll actually do a mock selection show where they unveil their current top 16 seeds. And that's after Florida's game against South Carolina. So assuming Florida beats South Carolina Saturday night, on Sunday when CBS does this, and it's going to air on CBS television during the Big Ten game that they have, Florida's going to be a 1. I mean, Florida will be a 1 seed with 4 weeks to go until Selection Sunday, which, again, I don't think any Gator fan would have predicted 2 months ago.
Yeah, and we talked about this, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, when Walter Clayton's ankle was freshly turned. And, clearly I was clearly wrong in his diagnosis. He's obviously healthier than I think a lot of us thought he was at the time. But the same will be true with Condon now. And again, we're not part of the medical staff. We don't see what his ankle looks like right now. We don't totally know. So without having the full knowledge of it and just kind of assuming and going off of what a normal sprained ankle is, you got a low grade ankle sprain is what a lot of the reports were. That's usually like a couple weeks, at least like 3 to 4 typically. And you would assume with round the clock medical care in college basketball, that's more like 2 to 3. And I said this about Walter Clayton. I'm saying this about Alex Condon. Now, I'd rather, if it comes that you obviously want to be a 1 seed, that'd be awesome. But to your point, I'd rather be a 2 or even a 3 with Elijah Martin, Walter Clayton Jr., Alex Condon 100% healthy, ready to rock, than limp into a 1 seed. You got to agree or disagree?
Oh, I absolutely agree. That's what I said. I just don't know if there's that much difference. It's cool to say you're a 1, right? I mean, that's awesome. But again, I mean, Florida in 06, when they won their first national title, you know what they were?
I know they were lower. I don't totally remember what they were.
They were 3.
Yeah.
They were 3 in 06, and they were 1 in
twos
07.
And threes win it all the time.
Yeah.
Normally there are the years like the last 2 years with UConn that was just going to steamroll everybody, pretty much no matter what. The 07 team for the Gators was kind of like that. But for the most part, if there's not like one team that's just crushing everyone like that, it was like you were saying, like 2s and 3s win championships all the time.
I'll tell you something interesting that I learned. I'm talking to Jerry Palm about this on Hacker After Dark. He projects right now, which I thought was wild. He had 14 SEC teams in the field right now. I don't think there's going to be 14. He doesn't either when all's said and done. This is what he had right now. He thinks more along the lines of 11 or 12, which is still a huge number to get in. Do you know there's criteria the committee has to go through where SEC teams can't play each other until a certain round of the tournament? I didn't realize this.
I didn't know that either. I mean, I guess that makes sense. I mean, you never see those same conference games in like the first round. I guess that makes sense.
If you play 3 times against a same conference opponent, you cannot meet until the Elite 8. If you play a team twice in the regular season, you can't meet until at least the Sweet 16. And if you play a team once, you could hypothetically meet in the round of 32. But I had no idea that that's what the committee has to go on. So when you're slotting these teams, if there's 11 or 12 or however many SEC teams get in, like a prime example would be Florida and Tennessee, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They played twice. Depending on if they play in the SEC tournament or not, let's say they don't. Florida and Tennessee then could not meet until the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Because they played twice in the regular season. And if you play 3 times, if Florida and Tennessee were to play in the conference tournament, then they could not meet until at minimum the Elite 8, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, but I guess it makes sense. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking back, like generally speaking, on March Madness and watching those games. Like it's not very often that you see South Carolina play Kentucky in the round of 64. Like you don't see games like that very often. It's always
You never see it in the first round. They never have conference match. That's what in fact in the history of the tournament, you'll never see a conference matchup in the round of 64.
wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So again,
Can we talk
the first
before we
conference
wrap here?
matchups will take place in the round of 32.
Yeah. Before we wrap here, Hat, can we talk football for a second?
Yeah, you want to talk Will Harris? Well, before we do that, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist brings it to you. Gator Bytes podcast with Graham Marsh and the hacker Ryan Green. Thank you to se-ortho.com, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, for their continued support of the Gator Bytes podcast. That's the best place in Northeast Florida for orthopedic care. Again, they have locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. Thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. I'm assuming the Will Harris news caught you off guard last night.
This is a concern, Hack. This I'm concerned about this.
From a
I don't
recruiting
really
standpoint?
Say that again.
From a recruiting standpoint?
From all of it. I mean, it's the first time in like 4 years that Florida's had a coach where it seems like their DBs aren't completely out of position every play. I mean, their DBs played really well at the end of at the end of last season. I mean, people keep, and I understand why, but the conversation at the end of last year is DJ Lagway and how they're scoring points and all that, but their defense coming on is probably the main reason they won. They beat LSU and Ole Miss.
Yeah,
Is it not?
Talk to Jackson Dart about the Gator secondary.
Exactly. And Will Harris had them boys playing well, and he's clearly a good recruiter. I mean, Drake Stubbs flipped from Miami, who he's going to Florida for a reason. They were able to hang on to Ben Hanks in recruiting for. I know he's a legacy, but he was considering leaving. They were able to hang on to him for a reason.
You just
They
flipped
got
the Tennessee kid
the other day for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you let this guy walk out the door and go to Miami at this point in the year? They're about to start spring ball.
That's what was weird. It's weird timing. I mean, I don't know this. My assumption is Miami just came in with a great offer. I don't know why Miami didn't have a secondary coach in mid-February either. I don't know if he left to go somewhere. That was kind of weird. But no, I mean it's not great by any stretch of the imagination. At the end of the day, right? After you let it sink in, at the end of the day, the 2025 Florida Gators will go as far as DJ Lagway goes, right? Now, I'm not saying the secondary won't help the cause and other positions won't help the cause, but if DJ Lagway is good, and he is who we believe he is, then Florida's going to be good. If DJ Lagway struggles or gets injured, I don't care who you have playing in the secondary, it's probably not going to matter. So from that standpoint, it's not like an uber catastrophic loss for me, but no, it was notable. I certainly mentioned it last night on Hacker After Dark.
It's more so the principle of the thing, Hack. This is a gotta have it year. This is an all hands on deck year. They can like there is no, and I think every reasonable person that watches Gator football agrees with this. People that like Billy Napier, dislike Billy Napier, all the above, there is no benefit of the doubt anymore. There is no more time. 7 wins ain't getting it done anymore. Okay, I need more wins, and I don't disagree with you that the team will go as far as DJ Lagway takes them. But what if they're in a close game with Miami? What if they're in a close game with LSU, and it comes down to the last 4 or 5 minutes, and a safety blows a coverage, and they lose a game because of that? And they got a really hard schedule again, man. They can't be doing stuff like that.
You're not wrong. Tell me another secondary coach in college football right now.
I get what you're saying. I understand. But the recruiting's part of it. That's honestly probably the weirdest part is you just recruited all these guys to Florida very recently.
Yeah.
In December, and one guy just signed, and Onis Conan-Banny. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. I gave it my best shot there. And now he's going to go to a rival school that Florida plays this year. Like I don't understand.
I'd have to look. Sinceri, the guy they just hired. I say kid. I remember him playing at Alabama.
Yeah.
Is he a linebacker? Was he a secondary player? He was something along those lines.
I wonder. I think he focuses on safeties. I think that's part of it.
Okay. So I mean, they got him, and obviously they have room now to bring in somebody else, and I'm sure Billy Napier will at some point. But no, I mean, look, did it stink last night? Yeah, I'm not saying it didn't. But again, this is all about DJ Wagler. It's not
But
about the secondary coach.
but I would say, like you were saying, like, can you name another defensive, like, can you name another secondary coach in America? But like, you probably can't name that many offensive line coaches. That's
No,
critically important,
fair,
right?
fair.
I mean, you just typically can't name that many guys, with the exception of like a Brian Hartline or someone that kind of everybody knows. But that doesn't mean they're not critically important. And it's more so, again, in totality, I probably generally agree with you. I don't think Billy Napier is going to lose or keep his job based on Will Harris being here. It's just more so, like I said, the principle of the thing. Like, how come in a year like this you're letting Miami poach your secondary coach? That bothers me.
Particularly in the middle of February. No, I agree. Quickly, Florida. The next time you and I talk, a couple of games will be in the rearview mirror for basketball. Do they have a good week? Do they win them? Do they win both of them?
Yeah, they win both. Yeah,
They
they
should.
got over what would have been the letdown game, and they won that game in convincing fashion. Now they're playing not very good teams. A lot of those games at home. That they're in a groove right now. That they're going to win a lot of those games going away.
Man, if we're sitting here next Friday and they're 23-3, 10-3
I'm
in
just
the SEC.
Heck, I'm just not sure Walter Clayton Jr. is going to let them lose to a bad team
Yeah,
when it all
yeah.
boils down to it. These other guys are playing well, but even if they don't, I'm just not sure that guy's too good.
That is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. Thank you for watching and listening to Gator Bytes, presented by Southeast Orthopedic Specialist on the 1010XL.com podcast network and on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.